Get ready to be inspired by the great things happening in rural education. The Rural Scoop will bring you new ideas and innovative solutions. We'll dive into education issues and we'll highlight what's working in your rural communities. You'll hear from a variety of educators, administrators, professionals, and others who will provide relevant and engaging content in each episode. And now, serving up the scoop, here's your host, Dr. Melissa Sadorf.
Well, welcome back to the Rural Scoop. I'm really glad that you're here to join me today for a conversation with a great leader I'm excited to talk to, and I know you're going to get a lot out of our conversation as well. So some leaders talk policy, but Jack Moles has lived it from the band room to the boardroom. And today, Jack is going to be joining us, the Executive Director of the Nebraska Rural Community Schools Association. And this is after a career that ran the full rural arc. He was a teacher, a coach, a principal, and a superintendent in small districts. And he was the first superintendent of Johnson County Central after Nemaha Valley and Tecumseh consolidated. So Jack is the person that superintendents call when the legislature is moving fast, or when a board needs a steady search, or when a tiny district is trying to keep up with some big opportunities, whether they're in CTE or dual credit or the arts. And they're doing that on a small budget. He's testified, he's mentored, he's merged, and he's managed through all kinds of decisions that really can test a community's trust. So we're going to be pulling lessons from those decades on the ground, what Nebraska Rural Schools is actually doing for districts come Monday morning, and how Nebraska's policy landscape is shaping rural schools this year. The other thing that we'll dive into is what makes the consolidation strengthen and not hollow out a community, and some practical moves that leaders can use to recruit talent, protect programs, and steady the budget without losing the soul of their schools. So let's get to it. Jack, welcome. Thanks for being here with me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
And I'm excited to just jump into some of your experience. So I want to start with your journey. What ties your journey from classroom teacher, where you started, and being a coach, to principal and then superintendent, and now as the executive director for the NRCSA? What does that look like on the ground there? Well,
so going back, I always wanted to be a history teacher growing up, and that was always my end goal, and so I got my first position at a place in southwest Nebraska called Bartley, who actually has gone through now at least 2 consolidations.
Oh, wow.
Since I was there. But Bartley, we had between 120, 130 kids, K-12. The whole 13 years that I was there, and loved it. It was when you talk about family, that was true family there in a school. But I was a teacher and a coach for 10 years. During that time, we had a longtime principal that was going to be retiring. And so the superintendent talked to me about becoming a principal, and I didn't want to become a principal, but he talked me into it. So I did it. And, I did 3 years, and then moved over to a district that was fairly close, actually, about 30 miles away or so, Arapahoe. A little bit bigger district, but again, we're probably 300 kids, K-12, maybe not even that big, but did that for 2 more years, and really could have stayed there forever. I love the community and like that, but I had my advisor at the University of Nebraska at Kearney was pushing me to become a superintendent. I did not want to become a superintendent, and but anyway, our superintendent was leaving at the end of my first year, and he was promoting me to be the superintendent. I didn't want any part of that. Yeah, I didn't think I was ready for it, especially, and so I had a visit with our board president at the time, and I said, "Bill, what do you guys think?" And I know I'm being pushed for this, and he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, I really don't think I'm ready. I think I need to learn more of what I'm doing as a principal. And he kind of went, "Oh, good." He goes, we really like you here, but we didn't think you were ready either. So it was kind of a joint decision. I was not going to be the superintendent. But soon after that, I got to think, well, why aren't I ready? And so that spring, I started looking at a few places and got hired at a place called Amherst, which was about the same size, maybe a little bit smaller than Arapahoe. But anyway, I did that for a year and really didn't have a great experience with my board there and decided to leave. Went to Nemaha Valley that you mentioned earlier. And my first board meeting, I just went, oh, yeah, this is what a board meeting should be like. And I then had 22 years of just having a great board and great experiences with my board. And so anyway, I was there 11 years, but after about 9 years, at about the 9-year mark, I started to see the writing on the wall that we were starting to lose kids. Finances weren't great. We were losing state funding. And so I had suggested to our board that maybe we got to start talking to our neighbors. And we were surrounded. There are 4 districts, one north, one south, one east, one west. And so the board, we decided, yeah, let's do that. And so we set up meetings with all 4 of our neighbors and then a couple of combinations of 3. And what we did is laid out our plan or our ideas on the table and just said, here's what it could look like. And my board, very far-sighted with my board, or foresighted, I guess. They were looking to the future. And all those talks were really good. But everybody was kind of going, well, we don't think it's quite the right time, except for Tecumseh. They kept saying, let's keep talking. And so we kept talking and actually did a feasibility study, which in Nebraska at the time, there was state funding for consolidation. And to get that state funding, it had to have a feasibility study done by an outside source. So we did that. And actually, the guy that did it eventually became our first executive director of NRCSA.
Wow.
But anyway, so we did that feasibility study, and we just kept saying, yeah, let's just keep in contact and keep talking. But we weren't really moving forward. But all of a sudden, we got hit by, both districts got hit hard by a loss of state aid. And we actually would have been on a levy override, which if you went below a certain number of kids in high school on a levy override, people could start freeholding their land out to other districts.
Oh, wow.
We did not want to get to that point. And so Tecumseh and us, like I said, we both got hit hard by loss of state aid. The superintendent from Tecumseh and I, were just kind of communicating in a lot of ways over years. But we said, well, why don't we get our boards together and talk about it a little bit? So we were actually hosting their district girls basketball tournament, and so they were going to be there at our place. We said, why don't we just go off to the side somewhere and meet? And so we did that, and we decided to kind of step it up a little bit. So that was February. By April, we're merging.
Wow.
But laid the groundwork for a couple of years before that was the thing that I tell people, because people say, God, that went really fast. And we say, well, but we really laid the ground for it. And the 2 districts, we decided to go together, and they did ask me to be the superintendent that stayed, and which was kind of we didn't think it would happen, neither one of us, because he was on a 3-year contract. I was actually on a 1-year contract by design, because I always wanted, if something happened, I didn't want my board to be tied to me. But so anyway, we were going to get about almost $1 million in help to merge, and which was going to be very helpful. Well, they decided, we both knew he was going to be the superintendent. I was going to move on, and then at the night that they were choosing the superintendent, we thought it'd be about a 15-minute meeting, and it ended up being about 2 hours in closed session. And they came out and said, well, we're going to identify the superintendent in another week. And I thought, you guys need to move on this. And so they were going to have another meeting in a couple of days. And I said, well, I can't be there that night because I was actually going to be interviewing for another position. And my board president was sitting next to me, he hit me on the arm, and he said, you keep quiet. And I said, and I looked at him funny, and he wrote down, you're the guy. So, okay, I said, oh, yeah, I'll be here Thursday, on Thursday night. So anyway, they asked me to be the superintendent, and it started a lot of hard work, but it was my favorite work I ever did as a superintendent because we had 2 communities and, 2 school districts, 2 staff that really wanted to make things work and really wanted to do good things for kids. And we really did that. Both districts benefited a great deal. We had great staffs at both districts and joined them together. And what was kind of a funny thing with that is our music directors or music teachers, as soon as we were talking about doing this, they sit down and said, okay, what could this look like for us? And they actually mapped it out and probably about where I would have put it. But anyway, I just thought, that's a great opportunity. So we put the staffs together and said, okay, elementary, you guys sit down and talk about what you think this could look like. And math teachers, you do that, science teachers. And except for just 1 or 2 positions, they kind of came up where I thought it would be. And so instead of us, the board and me making decisions like that, we really kind of let them do it. And it really worked well. And there was a lot of buy-in because of that, I thought. Yeah. But it was our music teacher took that step ahead of everybody else. So yeah, it was a great experience for me. I'd been 11 years at Nemaha Valley, loved the place. It was hard. We lost kids out of it because of they went to districts that actually were just closer to them physically. And but the kids that I was really, really close with, my oldest son was going to be a freshman. I had coached his basketball team for about 5 years. We lost every boy but my son.
Wow.
Out of that, so out of his class, but out of his class, we lost them all, and that hurt me because I really liked those kids and had a close connection with their families, and the families just said, it's just closer to go the other way, and it was for them. So, but it was, like I said, great experience, a lot of hard work, a lot of people pulling together, but. So I did that 11 more years, and at the end of 11 years, I was actually going to do 1 more year because my daughter just had our first grandchild in Virginia, and my wife got to go see the grandchild more than I did, and more a little jealous, I guess, of that. I was going to go 1 more year and train a principal to take my place, and then in the fall, spring, the NRCSA position opened up, and my board president said, well, you're kind of interested in that, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I really am. But he goes, go do it. And I go, no, I've already made a commitment here. He said, no, you need to go do this if you want to do it. So the board supported me, applied for it, got it. And that was 8 years ago. And probably my favorite job I've ever had. So
that's fantastic.
So long-winded story or answer to your question. I don't know if I even answered the question.
You did, absolutely. So let's. There's a couple of things I want to dive into, but let's start with NRCSA. So when a member district calls you, what are the top 2 or 3 problems that you end up trying to help them solve the most? And how do you move from, okay, I've got a phone call from a superintendent that needs some support to putting some action to the conversation?
Yeah. So I've had some superintendents that were struggling with maybe board or community or something like that. And they'll just call out of the blue once in a while just to visit. And sometimes that's all they need is just somebody to visit with, that's not associated within the district. And I really try to make that happen for them, that I can make connection for them. And I've had several of those over the years. Some of them lost their jobs. Some of them, stayed and things worked out well for them. And I just know when I was a superintendent, I always told other superintendents, get somebody that's away from you, away from you physically, that you can trust and talk to. And I had a guy that had been a teacher and for me at one time that I got him to, urged him to go into the principalship, lived 300 miles away from me, and he and I would do that, bounce things off of each other, and or just listen to the other, for a while, go and so that's kind of a position I kind of took on for, in some ways for, superintendents that would call me like that and try to give them some of my practical experiences, but kind of give them some other points of view maybe. So.
Yeah, that mentoring role is so important, especially in rural communities where you are so isolated and you're an island, and there isn't anybody around you that you can really call easily. I mean, you can pick up the phone, but you're not going to go next door for lunch. So having somebody that you've identified, I think, is really an important thing.
Yeah, it really is. And the superintendents that don't do that, I think, are the ones that struggle.
Yeah, for sure. You can't do it on your own. You've got to have people around you to support you. One of the things that I know that you and your team are really involved in is the legislative landscape and testimony and those kinds of things. So which Nebraska policy right now is probably the most consequential for rural systems, and how are you engaging that work and those issues?
Yeah, it continues to be a financial thing. We had so our funding formula is called TIOSA. It's based on meeting needs of districts. Well, in the around 2008 or so, ag land valuations really escalated. And we went from a very small number of districts. We have 244 districts in the state. So we went from a small number of districts not getting any equalization aid to the point where we were, up 2/3 to 3/4 of the schools not getting any equalization aid because of escalating land valuations, ag land valuations. Wow. Of course, that's not going to hit the metro areas. In fact, their state funding just skyrocketed during this time, and so we had worked many years trying to get things turned back around. We had a governor come in, our current governor, Jim Pillen, believed that every school should see something in state funding. So he introduced a plan to add in foundation aid, aid per student, and did get that through, and it was helpful, very helpful to our rural districts, especially, but some actually lost equalization aid because of the foundation aid, and they went backwards, which we had hoped that wouldn't happen, but that did happen. So now they're trying to figure out what is the best thing we could do. We pushed for years to have a commission that would study the school funding program and come up with a better plan possibly, or tweak the plan we had, or say, no, this is a good plan. Legislators and the governors would always fight that for some reason. Never could figure that out. Why not? Why not see? I mean, the plan was put in the early 90s, and we're still living by it to some extent. So anyway, this year that did take place in the last session. We do have this commission. Do have representation from education, but other sources of we have some senators on it, of course, and some different people like that. And they went through a study of things. Their first role was to submit a kind of a study of the plan with really not recommendations to be made from it. Their next step over the next year will be to look into, okay, what else could we do, or how can we fix this? Because most people would tell you it's a broken system, but it's what we've always done.
Sure. We hear that a lot, don't we? That tradition. We've always done that way. So I'm sure that one of the things that you probably spend time on is helping leaders get ready to head to the Capitol. And whether they're providing testimony in a subcommittee hearing or they're meeting with their different legislators, what do you coach them as far as preparation on? What do you say? Be ready to do A, B, and C.
Well, the biggest thing, if we have people going in to testify, the biggest thing I tell them is tell how it affects your district. And, that's the best thing they can do is to give the firsthand knowledge that they have of how things will affect them.
Yeah.
So that's always the biggest thing I give our people to, if they're going to go in and do that, I'll do that. For the most part, I'm actually the chief spokesman for rural. So most of the time I'm in testifying, but one of the things I hit on a lot in my testimony is protecting local control. Let the local school board do the job they were elected to do. Let their administrators do the job they were hired to do. And we have too many senators forget that.
Yep.
I'll talk about it, but then they forget it when they get in there. So.
Right. Can you think of a hearing where your testimony really changed the conversation and you just knew that what you were talking about landed with them? A couple of the ones that would stand out to me on that is we had the head of our education committee in the legislature really was not a big proponent of education. And but this would be more of it. They'd have interim hearings in the off session, and just kind of geared at one thing. And he often would call me and say, "Hey, why don't you do some research for me on this?" Giving it, shared superintendency was one. Getting rid of ESUs was another one. Our educational service units that are so helpful in rural schools. But anyway, he'd say, "Hey, do some research with your people for me, and come in and tell me about this stuff." And so I was always glad when he did that, because I'd survey the superintendents. We always get a great response from our superintendents. I'll usually go in and say, yeah, I had about a 60-70% response rate on this, because I make them. Those surveys are just pretty easy to answer, very short. So anyway, I go in and when I talked about, for example, he wanted to push the idea of the shared superintendency, and of course, the biggest thing I said is it should be a local decision. But the thing was that was a thing that was kind of dying in Nebraska, because districts wanted their own person. And so I was able to give them evidence on that. And also all of the things that rural school superintendents do. Compared to our metro area neighbors, superintendents in rural schools do a lot of things. You would know that. They're out driving in the morning to see if we should open school or not, in a snowstorm. They're actually serving as a principal once in a while, or they're coaching, or they're actually teaching a class. And so when I gave that, that's just an example of something that I gave and all the things they were doing. And it was kind of an eye-opener for the committee. The ESUs talked about
all the things that they do for our rural districts, but all the things that have been added in over the last 15 to 20 years that we didn't think about 20 years ago or so, especially in the area of technology or some of the things with special education we didn't know about. So those are times that I think I made a lot of headway with a guy that didn't agree with or wanted to do some things that I didn't want him to do, or we didn't want him to do, and kind of headed it off. So
success. So I want to go back and touch on consolidation, because I know that there are a lot of schools right now that are facing closure and consolidation for a variety of reasons, declining enrollment being, of course, one of the that we're seeing quite a bit of. And you led that merger for the Johnson County Central's consolidation. Can you talk a little bit, Jack, about what conditions make a consolidation work, and really what the pitfalls that boards and communities want to avoid might be?
Yeah, well, you see often where I think sometimes we see that two districts maybe go together for financial reasons only. Mm. And I think that's a bad move because you don't save that much money in a consolidation.
Right.
There's so many hidden things you don't think about. And so I whenever districts are talking about that, I just say, don't do it just for financial reasons. Do it to where you can make things a better thing for kids. More opportunities for kids is the big thing to me.
Right.
We were able to do that, although we were looking at things from a financial angle. But when we had started the talks, a couple years before we did it, we really looked at what could we do to expand opportunities for kids, and that's the thing that I wanted to drive home, and so that really helped us a lot. Our board makeup was really, really a good board makeup. What we had from my side, we had three board members that were going to have kids in the new district. Mm. And the board just said, yep, you're the three, because there was going to be three from each side. The other side had three very veteran board members that just didn't want to go through it. And so the other three board members, the younger board members, got to stay on. But really inherited some really good people in all that. And but making sure, one of the things I drove home to our principals especially was, we talked about, we've always done it that way, a little bit ago. And what I told them is, I never want to hear you say we've always done it this way, because we have never done it together. And so we didn't talk about it that way. Sometimes you did it that way because that's what you're used to, but we didn't talk about it as this is what we've always done. And really had to keep reminding them that all the time. And so I thought that helped out a lot. Yeah.
What about community identity? Was there any hiccups around, you take two different systems and put them together, and the things that come to mind are, school colors and mascots and, logos and community plans. How did you protect the identity of the new school district?
And that's a big thing that's always going to come up. There was talk of maybe just calling it Tecumseh Nemaha Valley. But what we did, we came up with the idea of having people submit ideas on each one of those. And then for colors, for school name, and what was the other thing? Anyway, we gave every family in the district a vote. And so that's how we came up with Johnson County Central. We had some other ideas, a couple other ideas I really liked a little bit better, but they would not provide, they the name would not have provided an idea of where we were physically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Johnson County Central worked really well. Plus, there was another smaller district in the county, and some people were going, yeah, we can call it that. And then if they ever come in with us, we don't have to. Oh, well, that's very far down the road. So. But the colors ended up being a combination of the two schools' colors. Tecumseh had been black and gold. We had been, Nemaha Valley had been red and black. And so we combined them, used all three of the colors. The mascot, we became the Thunderbirds, and Tecumseh had been called the Tecumseh Chieftains, and Nemaha Valley had been the Nemaha Valley Cardinals. So it was kind of a bird with the T from Thunderbirds supposedly represented Tecumseh. There are some different things to that, but yeah, we did that. We had put out a idea for people to submit possibilities for a logo, and we had a bunch of those, and one got chosen by, I think it was the kids chose that. We let the kids choose that one.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And the one that was selected was our counselor at Nemaha Valley. She had turned in some, and that was my wife. And I had no part in that, but that logo has since evolved to something more professionally done. But yeah, it was kind of a neat process. The other thing we had is we had a couple guys that had graduated from Tecumseh together. One was a music teacher in another district. The other one was an English teacher in another district. And they came to me one day and said, hey, what would you think of us writing a school song for you? Well, that'd be great. And they wrote a school song with all the instrumentation, the words, everything. And so, things move really quickly through the end of the spring and into the summer. And one of the neat things we had was at the county fair, where they always had a parade, and our band was always, our band was the first one to come through, the new band. And for the first time, they played the school song. That was kind of a neat time for me. So
yeah, that's fun. Yeah. So one of the things that I know nationally we're struggling right now is the talent pipeline, and in Nebraska specifically, what's working to recruit and retain both teachers and leaders, and how is NRCSA involved in searching, mentoring, onboarding, those kinds of things that make such a difference with that type of programming?
Yeah, that actually, when I was hired, when I was selected as the executive director, I set 5 goals for myself. And one of them was to work on the rural teacher shortage issue. And actually that has kind of changed from rural teacher to rural education shortage.
Yep.
Because, we got a huge shortage of bus drivers, of paras, of, all those people. And so it's been something we've been actively trying to do. We started a rural teacher committee of our superintendents, and really have a lot of people involved with that. We really spun our wheels for a long time on it. One of the co-chairs of that, who is actually going to be our president in another year, she and I had been involved in some statewide initiatives that were grant funded. And as soon as the grant funds ran, there were a lot of great discussions, but as soon as grant funds ran out, it was over and nothing got done. Right. Probably the most that got done is our legislature has taken some positive steps to both the retention and recruitment side of things, offering some stipends for people that stay in the profession, but also some financial aid for people that are do go all the way through school and then go out and teach, actually. So we've had some help there. As far as NERCS is concerned, we've had a scholarship program for many years for kids going into education. And I was the head of that committee for like 17 years. And at one point, we gave out about $1,000 split between 6 kids. And so really didn't go very far. But
right.
We had a benefactor come along. We've got a couple of initiatives that we've done to help generate funding for the program. And today, this year, we'll give out 23 $2,000 scholarships to kids going into education.
That's great.
And it's just been really neat to see that grow. And we have our funding our money is in the Lincoln Community Foundation. They keep telling me, you can do more. so we're kind of growing a little bit at a time, but it's been a neat rise in that. The other thing we started a year ago, we've got people that are going into education, becoming teachers in a non-traditional way.
Right.
For example, we've got a parent-to-teacher program in the state with the 3 state colleges. We've got a transition to teaching where somebody has a bachelor's already, but is going into, just decide, you know what, I think I want to be a teacher. After not wanting to be a teacher, they want to be a teacher. And so we started a scholarship program for that. Last year, we're giving out 3 $1,000 scholarships per semester. Those scholarships, helping people that are going into education, that are going to become teachers. And the neat thing about that program is I've just decided, you know what, if we're going to make a statement about this, I'm going to go personally hand these out. Mm-hmm. And so the first year we did it, I went to the furthest Northwest district and the furthest Southeast district in the state. We'll hand those out. So that's really been a lot of fun. And I give the districts, I say, hey, if you want to do it as a surprise, let's do it. And so that's been pretty cool. The other day, Friday, I did the last of them for the spring semester. And the school was having a Christmas pep rally. And so I got to be part of that and
fun.
Present somebody $1,000 right before Christmas. And she was very, very pleased to have that. So, it's those are some things we've done. But one of the bigger things we're just starting. So I mentioned that the superintendent and I that have been on some statewide initiatives. Mm-hmm. We made connection with somebody from the University of Nebraska Lincoln involved in teacher ed, and we're just having a discussion of, every time we see one of these initiatives come across as grant funded, it dies out. Yeah. And said, NERCSA, we've been kind of spinning our wheels to an extent. Other groups are doing the same thing. We need to bring everybody together and say, let's make a commitment to working on this until we can get, start seeing some traction and seeing some things change a little bit, whether legislatively, what we're doing with scholarships, what we're doing with ideas on retention, ideas on how we can support new teachers. And so we brought all of the major groups in the state together. But we're just starting the process. We've had 3 meetings, I think, so far, and everybody's excited about making this attempt. So we're going to try to keep growing it and see where we go with it. So,
wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
So that leads me to my next question, which is, tapping into the strength of the community or the people that are around you. But one of the things that's really important with building, whether it's partnerships like the ones you're talking about, or even just partnerships within a community, they're built on trust.
Yeah.
And so first, talk a little bit about how you ensure, especially if you're a new leader coming into a community, like you were with part of that consolidation. You were a new leader for half of your district. How do you build trust in a rural community? And then beyond that, if there is controversy that you have to deal with, how do you make sure that you navigate that in a way that keeps that social contract intact?
Yeah, that's a really tough one to deal with, when you do have a controversy, especially. But the beginning part of the question to me is you got to communicate a lot, and you got to be visible, especially in our rural districts. I see superintendents that aren't visible in their districts, and I know there's an issue. You just kind of tell there's probably an issue there. Superintendents that are out in the public, that are visible at activities, that are those are people that I think are going to be pretty successful. So that's that part of it. The part of dealing with controversy is you got to give as much information as you can. Sometimes you can't give much in, especially like a personnel issue. There's not going to be a lot of information you can give. One of the things that I did was I didn't talk with things in my community other than with my administrators. If like we were having a personnel issue that might be a little more visible, and sometimes that's uncomfortable because people will go to board members and go, "What are you guys doing about this?" And they go, "We don't know anything about it." And what do you mean you don't know anything about it? You're on the school board. Yeah, we trust our administrators to take us in the right direction. And when our time comes, we'll make decisions or we'll take action if needed. But make sure the board took that approach was always really good. And I had great presidents on my board. And they always did a great job of making sure everybody knew that it was not time for them to say anything. And there might never be a time for them to say anything, and my boards always did a great job of following that. There was one time in particular that was really uncomfortable for them. And our attorneys always told us, don't share things with your board because they may have to be the jury eventually or the judge.
Yeah.
And so I always tried to educate my board on that, and any new board members, we always educated them on that there is going to come a time possibly that you're not going to feel like you have enough information, but you got to trust the process. But this one time in particular, I couldn't share things with my principals. I couldn't talk with my principals. And because of the circumstances, I won't go much into that, but I finally went, and it got pretty uncomfortable for my board. And I finally went back to our attorney and I said, listen, I've got to have one board member that knows something. They said, no, you can't, because they can't be they'd have to recuse themselves. And I said, so it'll be 5 people instead of 6, but I've got to have somebody that the board can say, okay, if you trust what's going on here, then we're good. And my board president, I finally sat down with him and I said, okay, here's what we need to do. I need to communicate with you what's going on, how I'm handling it. But the only thing you can say to the board is Jack's taking the right steps. And the attorney really did not like me. Well, I had 2 attorneys I worked. One said, yeah, let's try it. The other one said, absolutely not. But I said, I'm going to do it. And they actually changed their stance because of that. You get to that point, it's maybe a move you could take. But it really worked well for us. Our board felt better about it, that Greg could tell them, hey, I know what's going on. Jack's doing the right thing. He's taking the right moves. And that, which actually helped me too then. I could breathe a little bit easier that I actually did get to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about, you mentioned school funding in Nebraska, and that rurals sometimes are just struggling to keep up.
Yeah.
And yet one of the things that we're expected to do is to make sure that we're providing opportunities for all of our students. So can you talk a little bit about how Nebraska's rural districts are keeping those big opportunities in front of their students with things like CTE or dual credits or the arts, even though they're operating some tiny budgets? What does that look like in Nebraska?
I think our schools do a remarkable job of this. With the funding the way it is, the greatest majority of funding comes from the local community through property taxes.
Right.
And our board, board members on our rural school boards, most of the time they're involved in the ag sector somehow, and they know how much it's hitting ag. And so they're very, they really do understand the issues. And so they're going to try to keep things down as much as they can. But they recognize our district, our boards are just doing a great job of recognizing what they need to do to meet some of those needs. And they're growing things that, we always had shop classes or, home ec classes back in the day or whatever else. But it's a different thing with CTE now. That's a different animal. And we got, our district's doing a really good job. We got some that are just doing phenomenal jobs with that, and kids having, coming out of high school with internships, with, on the job training, with college credits, a huge number of college credits. We've got a district that I always use as our shining light. That Bancroft Rosalie, their kids are graduating with over 30 30 college credits.
Wow.
And sometimes kids are graduating with an associate's degree already, and that's just phenomenal stuff that's taking place there.
Yeah.
So our boards do a good job, even though they keep getting hammered from the state level of, you keep spending more. Well, things haven't changed, and you haven't given us any more money. How are we supposed to do this? And but our educational service units are very helpful in providing opportunities to share things. We see districts working together to do that. So a lot of really positive moves being taken place, especially in CTE.
Mm-hmm. So there obviously are bright spots that are happening across the state, especially with NRCSA members that are rural. What's the next thing? What's the next capability or program or posture that you want to build next with your membership?
Yeah. I don't know. There's so many things that I always have these ideas that, this could be the next great thing. I don't know what it is. I don't want us I'm a huge supporter of CTE, but I don't want us to forget about the academic side of things also, and the idea that we need teachers, for example. I know businesses and industry, talk about we need workers, and they do. We also need other things, and teaching, is always going to be one of the big ones to me.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do to push that initiative,
Yeah. If you were mentoring a rural principal or a superintendent that was in a district in your state, what would you advise them to be thinking about starting in January when they're coming back after the holidays? What's a move that they can make that would make their school or their district more impactful or more effective starting in January?
Oh, good question. Because I would hope they had been doing it in the first semester.
Right. That's true.
But, just to keep, look at their communication plans and how they're communicating with their communities, with their board, with their staff. The idea of every kid can be successful, and making sure that you never lose sight of that. supporting staff, finding ways to provide, nothing else, moral support for them. But, those types of things are always important to me. Making sure that you're keeping up on things. We would have, the educational service unit I was in, every month we had a superintendent's meeting. And, sometimes we'd have a third of them, maybe half of them not come. And I know there are things that come up where you can't, but get out there and know what's going on. Find out what's going on. Get to conferences like that. And those conferences, you can learn things in a breakout session or a keynote, but the biggest thing I always thought was the networking.
Yeah.
Take place and what you learn from that, and take advantage of those opportunities because they're gifts to you.
Yeah, definitely. And you have a conference coming up in the spring. What can your membership expect from the spring conference this year?
Well, hopefully no snow.
Yeah, that would be good because I'm planning on coming. Yeah. So no snow would be a good thing.
Yeah, last year, so we do it on a Thursday, Friday, but the last 2 years we had a pre-session provided by Franklin Covey, free for our members and in leadership and like that, and so we had, I don't know what the number was, somewhere close to 100 people going to be there for that, and so that was supposed to be on Wednesday. Well, the weather kept telling us we're in for some bad weather on Wednesday. Tuesday was 80 degrees. And so we had to cancel that pre-session because the lady was coming out of Texas to do the training. But we knew Thursday and Friday were going to be okay for our conference. And so all of my executive committee came in on Tuesday. A couple people from NREA came in because the NREA executive committee was going to come to it. We ended up with 3 out of the committee could make it. But anyway, Tuesday night I had my executive committee to supper, and some of them were on their phones, and one of them started laughing. I said, "What are you laughing at?" And he goes, "It's 80 degrees out, and I'm calling off school tomorrow." And the snow came in just like they predicted and shut things down. And by Thursday late in the day, most of the snow was gone because the temperatures come back up, and it hit us pretty good on that one. But we lost a lot of. We were going to have a record attendance at our conference, and we didn't break the record. But hopefully this year we can do that. So.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I can get in this time so that I can participate.
Yeah. But the next week then is we go right to NRA Advocacy in DC.
That's right.
By the way, so yeah, I'll be flying out Sunday.
Yeah.
I always try to go in a little more early because my daughter and granddaughter live in Leesburg, Virginia, right outside of DC.
You got to turn that into a vacation.
I'm not going to be able to go visit them early this time because I'll be finished our conference.
So. Fantastic. Well, Jack, I always end with the same question, and that is, what does the term rural advantage mean to you?
Rural advantage to me, I mean, it's got other meanings, I know, but to me, it means the advantages of our rural schools so that we provide for kids. And, my wife and I raised our 4 kids in rural schools. We both worked in rural schools our whole careers. Because we saw the advantages there, the one-to-one, the smaller class sizes, the ability to be involved in a lot of things, the need to be involved in a lot of things. We always had the expectation of our kids, they were always going to be involved in something. And, but they were going to be in music, they were going to be in speech, they were going to be in athletics. We wanted to be in everything. And, I see kids that, took advantage of that and really benefited. Saw kids that didn't take advantage of those things, and their parents didn't push them to take advantage of those opportunities, and probably didn't aren't doing as well as they probably could have.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the big thing to me is the advantages kids in our rural schools have over kids in the bigger schools.
I love that answer. That's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you for bringing a Nebraska lens and decades of lived experience to this conversation. Your clarity on consolidation and funding sanity, talent pipelines, community trust, I think really gives rural leaders an idea of what a straight path can do and a steady hand. So I really appreciate just your practice without losing the soul of small schools. So thanks for all that you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, friends, if something here sparked a next step for your district or region, carry it into your next board briefing or cabinet huddle or community coffee and let it start a better conversation. If this episode resonated, please like the show, subscribe to the Rural Scoop, and leave a comment with your takeaway. And share this with a colleague who cares about rural schools. Those signals help other leaders find us, and I read every note. So I'm your host, Melissa Sadorf. And remember, in rural leadership, our strength really is our shared story. When we lead together, we thrive together. I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Rural Scoop. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep these important rural conversations going. And we'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment or share your thoughts. You can follow along and never miss a new release by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform or by following us on social. We're on YouTube at The Rural Scoop, Instagram at msadorf1, and X at msadorf03. The Rural Scoop is produced with support from Vela Educational Consultants. To learn more, visit velaconsultants.com. See you next time for more great discussions about rural education. And as always, keep leaning in to the rural advantage.